All right, so I think we're live here, and we're going to go ahead and get started. And thanks for guys for joining. I hope you enjoyed the keynote. I'm gonna just do a quick intro, and then I'm gonna drop out and let the experts in the room kind of talk about open innovation in retail, what they're offering, respectively, and really kind of pick up from there. And again, we heard a lot about the importance of working together, open ecosystem up front. So with that, I'll have each of you guys just give me 30-second intro to yourself and kind of what you do, and then of course you'll get into a lot more detail as you go. Maybe we'll just go in order of the slides here. Or the slide.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jason. I'm Kandokar Huck with SAS. I head up the IoT market strategy globally for all verticals, but we're going to talk about retail primarily on this session. Steve?
Yeah, Steve Jennis, Senior Vice President of Business Development at IOTech. We're but you'll hear more about us later on in the session. So I'm pleased to be here, and Jason, thank you for the invitation. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, so hi everyone, my name is Sandeep Kamath. I'm part of HP's Global Product Management and Strategy team, and within HP, I'm part of a business unit called Advanced Compute and Solutions. My focus is on the retail vertical, and my areas of interest are edge, analytics, IoT, AI, and other growth initiatives.
Thanks, Sandeep. Chris Timmons, I'm a Director of Marketing, and I work on ecosystem build-outs on all things open source around Intel's Internet of Things, retail, banking, hospitality, and education division.
Great. And you don't have that's a fancy, snazzy jacket there.
I'm not, no red jacket today.
Yeah, no, very cool. So we're just going to kind of dive into it, with Chris, telling us kind of what you guys have been working on from an Intel perspective, and then we'll hand it off as we go, and then kind of bring it back together into how the various components of the solution, fit together. So I'm going to drop off. I'll come back, later towards the end, but just kind of let you guys take it from here.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Jason. You can go ahead and flip to the next slide. So. Again, Chris Timmons here from Intel, and we've been working a lot on retail transformation. Our division's been deeply engaged in retail for going on about 15 years now. And one of the things that we look at is we take a very sub-segment approach to retail. Not all retail is the same. And we've got a couple pictures here to illustrate, you might think of an apparel retail and a quick serve restaurant as being really involved in totally different businesses. But actually, when you go out and talk to them, which we do on in regular cycles, what you'll find is they're actually very interested in implementing the same exact use cases. They're just consuming it from different ecosystems and different partners. And so one of the things that we work on is finding the commonality between these, where you can build horizontal building blocks that help people scale faster. And Intel, as always, is an ecosystem and partner player. We're not delivering in solutions to retailers. We work with our great partners like the ones we have on the webinar with us today. So if you could flip one more forward, Jason. So one of the biggest transformations we see is, if we start from the left, you see kind of a diagram of a lot of the ways that retail is built today. And this just happens to be a quick serve restaurant. But what you have is, you have a variety of use cases, and then you have piecemeal services that the end users are consuming in that space. They have potentially a purpose-built gateway, a purpose-built web instance, and the end user may in fact not actually get the data from that service. They simply might actually get reports that lag in time or are batched over time. So what we're starting to see is the edge, which we consider within the four walls of an enterprise, that transformed to be significantly more cloud-like. So we hear the term, cloudification or cloud everywhere, but really what it is building out frameworks that allow your developers to write an application once and then deploy it where it's most economically viable or closest to the point of data creation. So that can be in your data center, be that public, private, hybrid. That can be at the telco edge, or that can be all the way down at the far edge. But you really need a framework that allows you to do that. And what you can see here on the top right is the transformation is people moving to that type of architecture. And it looks a lot like container forward architectures. We're sure we're going to see things like virtual machines, and potentially on purpose-built devices, you might see snaps or flat paks or anything like that as well. But all of that being slowly connected up to a common bus, and so that you can actually start to move that data around like you do in the cloud. And one of the things that we're big believers in, and I think you'll hear some of that from Steve later, is that bus is most likely going to be an industry or community-based open source bus that allows you to kind of scale out and so that no one owns your innovation at the edge. And so you would start to see applications as they become containerized or VMs start to land on top of this platform. And that platform, by the way, will be either, I would say, it will be both vertically and horizontally scalable. And what I mean by that is, you'll be able to add more compute when needed. So I think that's the old school rack and stack mentality. But you'll also see kind of the much more modern thing of horizontally starting to add accelerators that allow you to unlock some of the use cases you see before. So that could be, video processing units, that could be GPUs, that could be FPGAs. You just want to make use of those and have them abstracted in a way that makes it easy for the applications to use. And what you can see down below is there's a lot of advantages to that. So you get, like I said, you get kind of the stackable units, you get kind of a container first architecture that becomes much more manageable and much more, I would say, homogeneous across your network. So you got to take some of the variability out of it. And you also, what you get is you get a reduction in the total number of endpoints that actually have to be managed. Because that's one of the things that we've heard from a lot of partners is, I'll give you an example. One of the quick serve restaurants that we spoke to, they said in 5 years, they expect to really have 200 different sensors existing within the 4,000 square feet of their average store. And they said there is zero chance that they're going to consume 200 piecemeal services from a variety of vendors. They're like, it's not scalable. It's not manageable. So Jason, if you could move on a slide. So what Intel's done is, we've kind of broken it down into 3 high-level buckets. We see the challenges, kind of across these buckets. One is integration. And I think anybody who's done work at the edge knows integration can be brutally difficult, getting systems that aren't meant to talk to each other. So really we see that where open source middleware comes in to help kind of, take away some of that lift. We think that simplification, which is kind of that rack and stack scalable vertically and horizontally cloud-like, future-ready compute really comes in. And then innovation, where you have systems where it's easier to deploy your AI, and the AI can consume data from multiple endpoints all at one time in a much more scalable fashion. So we continue to work across these 3 buckets. One more. So one of the other things that we work on is, we think that because this needs to be a community-based approach or an open source-based approach, and think in terms of what Intel did for Wi-Fi and USB, we know that there needs to be value for everyone in the ecosystem. And from that, all the way from your hardware providers, which, you'll hear a lot from the ODMs and OXMs, all the way up to your end users or your retailers. They all have to be able to extract value from this. And to do that, we built a program to help with that. And Jason, if you could turn to the last slide. And we call that Open Retail Initiative. And this is really a collection of like-minded partners who believe that open source, and be that data formats or standards or open source projects, can really help move the industry forward faster. And again, we're focused on that innovation, that simplification, and that integration problems. And we've so far have over 100 companies participating in this globally. It's a completely free activity. Anybody who's attending who wants to join, feel free to shoot me a note if you want to know more about it. But we're out there trying to help the industry, and I think a rising tide will lift all boats. And I think I'll turn it over on that note.
So thank you, Chris. I think this is where I come in. Jason, if you could take me to the next slide. So I couldn't agree more with Chris. So I work for a company named SAS, where we focus only one thing. So how to enable architecture where we can deploy AI model enabled analytics, right? And so now the session is around retail and retail sector. And so when we get down to the edge level conversation, right, when we have to talk about how to enable data science capabilities to really address retail specific problems. So what we are seeing, and unfortunately we're in the middle of a pandemic, which is sort of accelerated the digital transformation conversation even within retail sector. What changed drastically that 2-3 years ago, I think it was still in a, almost like concept situation where retailers were looking at that how to improve customer experience, consumer experience, connected retail type of applications, whereas due to the pandemic situation, that conversation accelerated to a point. Now they are having to really roll out meaningful sort of customer experience where the needs are sort of focused on what customers are asking for versus what retailers were thinking that they would invest in. So from a SaaS perspective, we're working with Intel and IOTech and other partners where basically we are putting customer at the center and we are looking, sort of thinking backward, right? We're doing the rethinking and redesigning to address sort of like a reshaped needs that customers are putting out there. So we tend to think from an value-based sort of outcome-driven type of solution and enablement for retailers. So we think of in terms of use cases, right? What is really happening in consumers' mind, whether during the pandemic situation or what will actually transform into sort of post-pandemic situation. Another key point that I wanted to highlight, there's a drastic change, right, over last roughly about 3, 4, 5 years, where you were able to really address the customer journey, right? Where you as a customer, your journey started with retailers and you kind of had an idea where your journey was ending, means ending with really a purchase or a customer service and some type, right? What drastically changed is that paradigm, right? Shifted tremendously, where now customer journey is almost like a circular journey. So the customer journey can start anywhere, it can end anywhere, or it doesn't end anywhere. So Jason, if you flip forward a slide. So what we talk about, we are trying to transform from a customer's experience discussion to a human experience discussion. And I will talk about a little more a topic that we always talk about with our partners when we are thinking of edge AI enabled solution strategies, right? We talk about moments of truth. What that really means is it really doesn't matter how you really improve the architecture or what kind of enablement capabilities you're deploying. At the end of the day, it really matters where the end users, the customers for the retailers, they're the ones who are making the decisions. They're the ones making the decisions at different moments of truth. Literally what that means is when a customer, let's say Huck or Chris, start their journey to make a decision with a retailer that they want to purchase something. But until that moment of truth happens, that the customer actually makes a purchase decision and go with a certain retailer, you really don't know when that moment of truth is happening. So from a solution enablement perspective, we try to follow the customers and listen to the customers and customers' need. And we help to enable edge AI enabled sort of capabilities where the customer is able to make that decision no matter where they are on their journey. So this is where sort of like you would hear us talking about more like how do you bring AI model enabled analytics capabilities that can drive the end customer, that means retailers' customers, to actually make some decisions at their moments of truth. So Jason, next slide, please. So this is where we feel that the industry is at, and so good or bad reasons, right? So there you would see that, I get these questions that, hey, Huck, so which retailers are seeing success and which retailers are struggling through these sort of like unexpected situation that we're going through globally? So where we see that there have been a set of retailers who were a little maybe early in their digital transformation journey, so they were able to make the right decisions in terms of what type of technical stack and they would need going forward, versus unfortunately there are other retailers, they are struggling a bit and they're learning through this unfortunate situation. So the retailers who are seeing success, and I would put them in almost like a winner's circle, that they're the ones who were able to make some pivots, right, in terms of capabilities rollout. So they were the ones who were listening to the customers, even through bad times, right, where you would see that new type of capabilities have been deployed, especially around using edge and AI capabilities, right? Click to collect. You would see all these order online pickup, but you can place the order and then you connect with both brick and mortar and omni-channel side, right? So there are new capabilities that are being looked at and rolled out, all the way to contactless payments or contactless experience. If the customers don't feel comfortable going into a brick and mortar, how do you make that happen? All the way to fraud and loss preventions and other types of situations and challenges that retailers have always faced, and now they're able to deploy it using edge level, sort of like what we call computer vision enabled inferencing decisions, right? Decisions need to happen at that level in that brick and mortar store when the customer is actually coming into or coming even to the parking lot of it. Jason, if you can forward one slide. So where we are seeing sort of like tremendous transformation, that retailers, the winners, are making investments in terms of, almost like a forward-looking investments. We kind of tend to sort of look at three different buckets. It's really, how do you deliver a connected consumer experience, right? That no matter where the customer is, at home, in car, or at a retail store, or outside retail stores, how do you understand your customer better, what they're looking for, what are their preferences? That drove sort of all the discussions and enabled around automated checkout, right? This whole notion around contactless experience, cashierless store, all the way to smart shelves. I still remember, like 3-4 years ago, we were still looking at working with several retailers how to enable smart shelves, and now we're looking at how to actually deploy it at scale, smart shelves at individual brick and mortar retail stores. Second bucket, we really see that how connected consumer engagement experience drives connected sales. And this is where you would see that retailers are talking about, right, proximity enabled, sort of like geo-fenced enabled custom offers based on who that customer is, Huck versus somebody else. Automated product recommendations, that's another area that where we're seeing a lot of investments around, right? So that they also, retailers are able to address the needs around how to optimize their inventory, whether at a shelf, the physical shelf at the store, versus an electronic shelf on or e-commerce side. The last area that we're seeing that driving a lot of discussions around really how does it impact operations. At the end of the day, retailers will still have to be profitable through this enablement of new technology stacks, right? So it kind of touches real-time inventory, right? Product assortments, how does it sort of impact merchandising or demand planning for what product to go to the shelf and what not. And that also touches fraud and loss prevention. So Jason, if you go to the next slide, please. So really, what we sort of tend to look at with our partners when we are looking at retailers' specific needs around some of the use cases, right? It's easier to read the chart from left to the middle and right to the middle. If you look at left to the middle, it's really addressing that what we have learned from the physical retail world, right? Brick and mortars. The new capabilities that are being rolled out and being discussed, that how do you really understand these aspects of a customer who is still coming into the store, right? What they need, which aisle they're spending most time, what the footfall looks like, right? How they come in, how much time they spend, so dwell times and things like that, right? That gives you a notion of what we call sort of like a physical heat map. Whereas if you look at from the right side of the chart, it's really the digital sort of innovation space where you and I are, as an electronic consumer, leaving a lot of breadcrumbs, right, as we make purchases through online and e-retailers, right? And that brings you to sort of the center. And that's where the moments of truth happens, that where Huck, Chris, or Sandeep or Steve making the decision that to buy what from what retailers at what time and why. So what we are trying to enable using Edge AI capabilities to understand that continuum customer journey. So all the way from in-store to online and mobile in between. So this is what I had wanted to share, that how we are enabling some of the capabilities at the edge. And with that, I would like to hand off to Steve Janis from IOTech.
Thank you. Thank you to Chris and Knuka. I think I'll start off by talking about the top-down versus the bottom-up. The top-down approach is, market-driven, and Chris mentioned how we need to be use case driven, and that's very much the case. Has been forever, I guess, but it's even more apparent today with the dynamic nature of the retail industry, and not just because of COVID, but because of Amazon. There's a very, very dramatic shift in demand for new support of new use cases in the retail environment. We're seeing a very dynamic market. We're seeing a lot of use cases being identified. I know that Sandeep will talk about them in the next presentation as well. So we're seeing the market demand, if you like, the market pull evolving dramatically and in a positive direction for a number of macro economic reasons over the last year or two. From the bottom-up perspective, the problem is, how do we synchronize enabling technologies to meet the needs that are driven by this new market demand for the automation of many new use cases? I'm not a retail expert, so I'm going to leave the use cases to others. But in terms of harmonizing and orchestrating technologies to support these new distributed computing solutions, and Chris made the point that this is a very distributed compute environment, cloud, edge, device. We're computing at every level, and it needs to be synchronized, it needs to be harmonized to get the best end user result out of that complex scenario. We also have the complexity of heterogeneity. We've got not only heterogeneity in terms of vendor ecosystem, we've got heterogeneity in terms of legacy data sources, the brownfield environment, some people call it. We have heterogeneity in terms of new devices being deployed and needing to be connected. And last but not least, we have the complexity of the IT-OT interface. We have the top-down meeting the bottom-up. And so we've got all of this complexity in the technologies, which are all advancing. We just talked about AI. We're talking about edge compute. We're talking about machine learning. We're talking about distributed compute everywhere. All this complexity means that we need better tools and better environments to support these solutions. And the last point that Chris made, this has to be done in an open environment. This has to be done collaboratively and across the industry to get the tools and environments we need to deploy these new technologies in a harmonized way to deliver the benefits of that these use cases require. So that's why IOTech exists, is to essentially, if you want it in one sentence, we want to be we want to be the commercial partner for open source and community-based developments to harmonize and orchestrate these technologies into solutions. And we're edge focused. So next slide, please. So we have always and continue to work as a commercialization partner for the EdgeX Foundry. This is an open source initiative started 3 or 4 years ago. It's under the Linux Foundation Edge umbrella organization now. We have 3 products that leverage this technology. We have Edge Expert, which is an edge stack to support, connect, and compute both northbound, southbound, and east to west at the edge. So peer-to-peer as well as up to the cloud or data center and down to the data source. We have XRT, which is a real-time subset, if you like, or specialized version of the EdgeX Foundry code base to support real-time, more appropriate perhaps to industrial applications than retail, but real-time really is in the eye of the beholder, what you mean by real-time. But here we're talking about deterministic response and time-limited end-to-end solutions. And the third product we have is Edge Builder, which is a product that helps at the thin edge, beyond the telco edge, to prep and deliver bits to the box in terms of managing the distributed environment at the edge. Next slide, please. Okay, southbound connectivity is crucial. I mentioned earlier the heterogeneity and the OT-IT interface. So southbound is where that all comes together. And there are a number of industry standard protocols out there that we support. There are also, we have tools to support the development of new adapters or new device services, as we call them, to plug in and interoperate with various data sources. So southbound connectivity is part of the solution here. And if you're coming from a cloud environment or you're coming from a diverse deployed environment, you need this connectivity. You need to get the data flowing to where it needs to be to support the applications wherever they are in the distributed system. Next slide, please. Okay, and the point to make here is that the solution we provide here is agnostic. It's cloud agnostic. You can connect to any of the mainstream public clouds or to multi-cloud environments. You can even support private cloud environments. It's agnostic in terms of hardware. We love Chris and we love Intel, but we also love ARM as well. So we're not picking winners. We're supporting an open environment at the hardware level as well as at the software level. We're agnostic in terms of operating system, and we're agnostic in terms of coding language, whatever. It's a purely agnostic approach to supporting this orchestration of technologies in support of edge compute and new use cases. Next slide, please. And this is my last slide, but I did want to come back and close the loop back to Intel. We've been following Chris's initiative around Open Retail Initiative for a long time. We have this approved RRK, which is RFP Ready Kit by Intel, which is pulling together these technologies, orchestrating them in support of the Open Retail Initiative reference framework for edge compute, in-store compute, if you like. We're a long way from the the holy grail of edge compute in the sense that everything just comes out of the box. You turn it on, it senses all its data sources, it senses all its resources, it just configures itself and so on. We're a long way. We're several years away from that sort of world, but we're beginning to bring these technologies together in easily consumable packages that can be deployed by independent software vendors or systems integrators or even end user IT, OT departments to support this concept of new business value through new use cases supported by compute everywhere. Thank you for your time, and I'll pass it over to Sandeep now to talk about HP's approach.
All right, so hi again. Thanks, Steve. Let me talk a little bit about how HP is in this space. So HP doesn't need any introduction, hopefully. As a pioneer in Silicon Valley, HP has been at the forefront of technology for over 80 years. And edge compute is one such area with so much potential to move the industry forward. And with the onset of 5G combined with edge, combined with AI, we see several key experiences can be enabled in retail in a fast, scalable, extensible, and even secure way. So speaking of retail, the earlier speakers noted it's under transformation for a while now, and recent events have only accelerated that. And for a while now, you can go ahead and build the animations, Jason. Today's brick and mortar retailers have been trying to improve some key business metrics by adding sensory analytics within the store. And these includes metrics from inventory management, customer engagement, and everything in between. And there are some challenges here. And really, it speaks to why edge and why AI on the edge and all of these use cases, why they would need that. So first is several of these solutions are still cloud-based. And since some of the smaller ISVs focus on only 1 or 2 use cases, retailers end up with multiple cloud services in the store, which can access each other's siloed data. And as we know, having a common data pool is critical to creating cohesive insights and make the right business decisions in the right point, like Hug covered earlier. Secondly, on the other hand, retailers have been trying to avoid cloud lock-ins for cost, connectivity, latency, or maybe some other reasons. And they want to create on-site, real-time, actionable insights, right? And there are a couple more things. Like third, there are about a dozen protocols that we saw on the previous slides that these sensors use. So it's very hard to have a single solution that can cover them all. And as a result, there are many implementations, almost as many implementations as there are vendors and customers. And they cannot scale, the cost add up. So really, something needs to change, right? And we believe that this is where edge technologies can come to the rescue, especially if it handles the data ingestion seamlessly for the ISVs. So let's go to the next slide. So what we did at HP is that we looked at some of the surveys in this space, right? These surveys are done by IHL, a very respected, highly respected retail industry analyst. And they found that retailers do want to spend on some of these use cases in priority. And the list is here. You can see inventory management, customer engagement, associate empowerment, customer loyalty, CRM, etc. And when it comes to these spending plans, you do see that in the red circle on the right, the edge computing does figure pretty prominently. You can see about 460 or 400% increase in participants saying they will invest in edge compute in the next 24 months. And the recent events, if you can click one more time, Jason, like COVID-19, they have only accelerated some of these investments, right? As the quote there would say, that there are decades when nothing happens, and then there are weeks when decades happen, right? This is definitely true right now. We can see some of the sensory analytics are being placed all the way from checking the temperature as you enter the store to something more advanced within the store. And now even with this, the issue of lack of standards remains an inhibitor as an industry. Now we know HP actually has the most market share in point of sale solutions today, and we keep hearing from the retailers about this all the time. We believe the industry collaboration towards open framework will unleash a lot of innovations in this space. Let's go to the next one. So earlier speakers covered both of these initiatives, so I won't spend much time here, but Open Retail Initiative by Intel and other top technology companies, they believe in open accessible solutions to accelerate these innovations. And the other one is Linux Foundation's LF-Edge to create these technical standards and framework to achieve that technical collaboration. So let's go to the next slide. I really don't need to explain why HP decided to be part of this. The reasons are simple. Edge technologies and IoT in general have been a fragmented space, as we just saw, and several proprietary protocols, data is trapped, sometimes within the same store. So an effort to unleash that with these initiatives was very meaningful to us. And a common collaborative harmonized framework, like in the next slide, Jason, if you forward, is EdgeX Foundry. So Steve covered some of this earlier. It's open framework by LF-Edge. It helps in the deployment of comprehensive use cases at the edge by unleashing that data. And it provides you that open common framework. And it has already generated a lot of interest. You can see 6 million downloads by May this year, making it a true contender for the data ingestion framework at the edge. So how does it, in the context of HP, if you go to the next slide, Jason, so our retail portfolio is exhaustive. You can see it captured in one slide. Not everything could be captured, but just a representation. And all of these solutions are purpose-built. Now, why purpose-built? Because these products have long life. That's what the retailers want. They can withstand the harsh retail environments with appropriate IP ratings, and they have extensive connectivity ports, and they come with a lot of, the appropriate warranties and services on site because the business depends on these things. And we build, all in one. We build a convertible solution that can act as both fixed and mobile. We have several modular compute platforms. We build a variety of peripherals. We have cloud solutions to manage these apps and devices. And now we are entering, as we hear from customers every day, the edge solutions that can leverage this entire portfolio and offer on-site analytics and insight solutions. And this is where we expect the power of open collaboration like LFH platform, EdgeX Foundry will help accelerate the ecosystem. So let's go to the next slide. So what we did along with Intel earlier this year in January in NRF, retail's biggest trade show in North America, we built a prototype using EdgeX framework to showcase a simple use case, theft detection at self-checkouts. As you are seeing these self-checkout stations in retail, there is a lot of theft issues happening there. And the demo was very well received. It brought us a lot of valuable feedback. We could see that we had hit a common problem that we as HP are very well equipped to solve and sort of play our role to help the ISVs and early adopters in this space. So this blog post went out a couple of weeks ago. We are unveiling what we are calling HP Engage Edge. HP Engage is our retail brand. Edge is the product. And it is simply designed to accelerate the edge deployments for ISVs and developers in this space. So if you go ahead and build the slide, Jason, it really is a hardware-software bundle that combines our purpose-built hardware with the EdgeX framework to help with the data ingestion. And this enables the use cases that are listed there, from inventory to customer engagement to anything that is sensor analytics based. Let's look at the quick specs in the next slide. So as it says here, it is really, it's designed to accelerate edge solutions in retail and hospitality. It is the world's first product in retail. We are very proud of that, powered by the EdgeX framework. We are launching this with one of our purpose-built retail hardware that is shown here in the picture, HP MP9. However, this is really compute agnostic. So we can use any of the purpose-built compute options from the portfolio that I shared earlier. And it's ready to go with the data ingestion framework, the software that is extensible for any sensor, and it's, of course, cloud agnostic. It is powered by HP's own ThinPro operating system mentioned there that is purpose-built and optimized for these kind of computes. And we are also certifying this under Intel's RFP Ready Kit program, which is very well designed to accelerate this ecosystem. So if you go to the next slide, once again, we believe innovations like HP Engage Edge, this product is something that's a testimony to HP's, our commitment to solve critical problems in this space. The purpose of a product like this is to realize the promise of edge technologies and AI to solve some real problems in this space and remove impediments to progress, right? And we can't wait to see how ISVs and developers make use of this and sort of pave the way for ultimately benefiting the customers with their business goals. So I want to end on the next slide by saying that we are really excited about the opportunities here. We collectively have these opportunities ahead of us. We definitely want to play our role in this space with such innovations. And my call to all the ISVs and developers watching this is let's work together to bring the future here faster. And with that, let me hand it back to Chris to summarize the solutions architecture.
Thanks, Sandeep. So as you see here, I guess, well, let me take a step back. I think one of the important things to remember is solutions are generally not going to come from just one party. You need a lot of really good partners working together. From the hardware layer, you've got good support from companies like Intel and HP, and then on being able to move the data around, you've got great partners like IOTech and ZEDEDA who can help with the application product lifecycle and managing the containers. And then you've got wonderful partners like SAS who can take that data and actually activate it for you. And so what you kind of see here is a representation, a kind of a south to north view up. On the very south side, you've got lots of what we call, you can call it sensors. I really think of it as like data creation endpoints. They can really be a variety of things: computer vision, POS, or point of sale, any of that stuff for SKU detection for additional data. But think of like, anything from environmental sensors, monitoring all your equipment, all of that can flow, kind of systematically through a platform like this. So you've got HP Edge hardware flowing into the E project, which is a data open project through LF Edge as well for their Edge virtualization engine. and then flowing into an EdgeX bus, and then pushing data to where anybody wants that data to go. And that's picking up that data, being it on the edge, the telco, or the cloud, and making sense of it for you. So that's really how this builds up south to north.
Yeah, but anyone. I mean, the only thing I would highlight on ZEDEDA is as Chris mentioned, Eve is that open abstraction below EdgeX, and the Eve framework or kind of edge computing engine allows you to run both VMs, virtual machines, and containers. So as a retailer, if you have like a legacy point of sale system that runs in Windows, or some sort of application that runs in in Windows, you can run that right next to IOTech's Edge Expert, right next to a computer vision model from SAS, the data engine. So it's really about abstracting that complexity to be able to kind of run a variety of workloads, on the HP hardware. I'd open it up, I guess, to other folks, to chime in. We've got a couple more minutes, and then we got to wrap it up. But
no, Jason, absolutely. This is Huck from SAS. I wanted to add a comment. I think one of the other speakers talked about that sometimes how critical, right, the partner ecosystem is to solve one or many specific targeted problems. So this is an example, right? So where SAS is working with IOTech and Intel-based hardware with HP and ZEDEDA, right? I still say that this solves towards a baseline scalable sort of edge AI architecture. Now, that means when we are aligning with very specific problems that retailer wants to solve, there may still be necessary that couple other additional ISVs or other elements to be part of this architecture itself, and that drives the partner ecosystem and the significance of it for the retailers. So we can't. It means there is no way to minimize it, and we're just trying to bring a baseline architecture much closer to what retailers need or looking at.
Yeah, so totally agree. Flexibility is key, really. You need these platforms to be able to, I think, essentially land applications from a variety of vendors on them to get the cost of ownership right and to get the scalability right.
Mm-hmm. And with that, Chris, means to your point, there are ISVs that some of us are working with who design and develop the end user application, what we call it, right? Much closer to retail customers. But the challenge also has been that some of those smaller scale ISVs is not able to address the scale and the security and the volume, right? So when you're looking at retailers, and we're also working with retailers who have the scale, the need for the scale, anywhere between 5,000 to 7,000 stores, right? How do you really deploy an edge AI enabled infrastructure without actually having a solid partner ecosystem that addresses the baseline needs towards that?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Huck. I think one of the things too is, with kind of flexible platforms, you can kind of slice that enterprise a bit finer. So maybe there's applications that work really well in one part of your enterprise that really aren't fit for the other part of the enterprise. And you can, and finding out what works is equally as valuable as finding out what doesn't work. And you want to be able to do it quickly. So I think we're there, Jason.
Yeah, cool. Any like 10-second comment from Sandeep or Steve? Otherwise, yeah, we are at time. This has been a great conversation. Really appreciate you guys joining and bringing your expertise.
Yeah, great conversation.
Yeah. Anything? Okay, cool. So I'm just going to flash this last screen. We're not going to go through all the bullet points here. Just that way, if you're watching the replay, you can pause the screen and kind of read through. Obviously, reach out to any of the folks online. Whether it's Intel, HP, SAS, IOTech. I mean, this is about how can we go collectively help solve your problems, drive new outcomes. Check out Open Retail Initiative. It's a really great initiative. A lot of companies, as Chris mentioned, there's about 100 organizations backing it, and it's really, as he said, it's about how can we focus on solving problems, the baseline problems together, and then you can really just focus on the value around the wheel. I mean, that's obviously a consistent message today. But with that, I'll kind of wrap it up. This will be available on replay later. And thanks, guys. Really appreciate your time today.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jason.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.